The MBA Candidate Podcast is the world's most exciting show about what it's like to go to business school. We cover all the action, from the GMAT to networking, all the way to case interviews and behavioral interviews. Welcome to the MBA Candidate Podcast, the show that interviews business school students about life. I'm your host, Adam Miller, a first-year MBA candidate at the University of Virginia, Darden School of Business. Today, we're sitting down with Ron, a first-year MBA candidate at Duke Fuqua. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Why don't we start off with your elevator pitch?
Sure. I received my bachelor's degree in political science from Emory University in 2012. Right after graduating undergrad, I went straight to law school at Harvard Law School. After that, I started working as a white-collar criminal defense attorney. I mainly handled cases working for Fortune 100 companies. After working in private practice for about 2 years, I decided to go over to the government, where I got a job at the city of Atlanta as an assistant city attorney, where I handled the city's federal civil rights litigation, mainly involving Atlanta police officers.
So you are a young black man who went to Harvard Law School, and now you are representing city police officers. Can you say more about what that's like?
When I first got the job, I was told I would be doing federal litigation on behalf of the city. I did not know that meant representing police officers. But I will tell you, I've learned a lot from the law enforcement perspective, and I'm proud to say, by and large, the Atlanta police officers are going out each day trying to make the best decisions they can and do right by the citizens and residents of the city of Atlanta.
How about when you were in college? What was your perception of police officers back then and as you were starting at Harvard Law?
I associated the average police officer with something negative. It made me uncomfortable to be around police officers. It made me uncomfortable to be pulled over by a cop. And so when I got to the city of Atlanta and I started working on these types of cases, it really allowed me to see the issue from their perspective. And what I realized is that, most of these cops are not bad people. They are humans, and sometimes they do make mistakes, but by and large, they are trying to do the right thing. And that gave me a greater appreciation for what they do. And what I realized also was cops can be put into impossible situations. What do you do if a suspect is resisting arrest? What do you do if a suspect doesn't listen to a lawful command? And so I try to understand, this subject area in a more nuanced way. However, at the same time, there are instances where the police are just dead wrong. I can tell you a personal story. I'll never forget it. On my way to Harvard Law School, I was driving with my parents as I drove up from Atlanta to Cambridge, and we were pulled over in South Carolina. The officer stopped the car. He approached the window, and he said he was pulling us over for driving 73 in a 70. We're in South Carolina. I thought that was odd, but what made it even odder was the fact that he then asked me to step out of the vehicle and go to his police cruiser, where he began to interrogate me about where I was headed and all of the luggage that I had in my vehicle. And that was a very degrading and demeaning experience. Here I was with my parents trying to celebrate the fact that I had been admitted to Harvard Law School and I was about to embark on this journey. And I had a white police officer in South Carolina racially profiling me. And so he kept me in the back of his cruiser for about 5 to 7 minutes interrogating me. Then my father stepped out of the car and started walking towards the cruiser.
Wow, this is getting really intense, Ron. Let's take a quick break. This episode is sponsored by Relish.
Hi, I'm Zach.
Are we recording?
Yeah, Sarah, we're doing the ad right now.
Oh, hey, I'm Sarah.
And we are the co-founders here at Relish Careers.
We were once incoming MBAs, and we created Relish Careers because we wanted a way for MBAs and employers to connect online. So join relishcareers.com today to learn about the companies that want to hire you.
and to view our exclusive employer webinars this summer to prepare for school.
All right, so where were we? You were on your way to moving to Cambridge, and you got pulled over by a cop. They asked you to step out of your vehicle, and now your dad got out of the car?
Like any father, he wanted to know why his son was behind the cop car for going 73 in the 70. In that moment, even if you're compliant, the outcome can turn deadly. He started approaching that cop car pretty aggressively. The officer's partner stepped out, told my dad to stop coming forward. My dad continued to come, and I just thought to myself, this can get ugly quickly. And I asked the officer, am I free to go? And luckily, he did let me go. But had he not, that could have turned ugly. A black male, a Harvard Law School student, I don't lose sight of the fact that I am still can be racially profiled by the authorities.
Do you think that being able to say you were on your way to Harvard Law School played any role in them letting you go when you said, am I being detained?
Absolutely. I happened to have all of my enrollment information on me, and I showed it to him. Once he saw credibility in that story, and I was able to provide him documentation proving to him that I was headed to Harvard Law School, he backed off. And I think had I just been, the average citizen, it could have turned out differently for me. The cop would have presumed the worst.
I want to take a step back and talk about Ronald growing up as a kid. What were you like as a child, and what did your parents do? Were either of them stay-at-home parents, or what were their careers?
I grew up in Miami, Florida. My dad was a security guard. My mom did medical billing. I had 3 older siblings, and surprisingly, none of them graduated from high school. When people think about my story, or when I tell people my story, they're always surprised at how I was able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish, at least academically and professionally. Growing up, we didn't have a lot. It was 6 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. I resented the fact that, we were poor. I didn't resent the fact that my parents couldn't, give me what other kids had. I just didn't like being poor. And so I think that motivated me to find a way that when I got into adulthood, I could have better living conditions, better socioeconomic conditions for myself. So I was always academically focused. Also played football for a long time because that helped me stay disciplined and committed to something, which I thought was important. And I really enjoyed sports and education, and occasionally hanging out with my friends. I grew up in a neighborhood where it really wasn't safe to go outside because a lot of the neighborhood kids were involved in gang activity. And in order to separate myself from that, I just did not go outside as often. And I had a few friends in the neighborhood, and I would go to their house specifically. But outside of that, I just wasn't hanging out in the neighborhood because no good would come from that.
I want to ask you about the future. I don't know if you have ever thought about starting your own family someday, but you mentioned that drive of wanting more for yourself and hating being poor. You're on a path right now where I don't think you're going to have to worry about that anymore. Do you ever think about if you have kids, whether or not they'll have that same drive if they don't grow up wanting or needing more?
Adam, that is something I gave a lot of thought to because I don't want my children to grow up not understanding the value of hard work. I fully intend to be in a great financial situation by the time that I have children, but they will know the value of hard work. They will know that things will not just be given to them, and they will appreciate the small things in life. I think that's important because I think that shaped me as a child growing up, and it helped build character. maybe they won't have to worry about where their next meal comes from, but I won't buy them a car, for example, when they get in high school. That would be something that they have to earn. I won't just buy things for them just because they ask. They'll have to work hard for it. So in very small and subtle ways, I will try to teach them those values that were ingrained in me growing up.
I want to ask you to just think back to some of these big milestones in your life. High school graduation, getting accepted to a top college, graduating from that college, getting right into Harvard Law School, and now getting into a top 10 MBA program. Which of those was the most powerful for you and your family?
When I graduated high school, I thought it didn't really mean much to me, because to me, getting a high school diploma didn't mean it didn't guarantee that I would be able to rise above, poverty. There were a lot of high school graduates in my community who were living paycheck to paycheck. So I didn't see high school graduation as a major milestone, even though none of my siblings had graduated from high school. It just didn't resonate with me in that way. Similarly, when I graduated from Emory, I fully expected to go to college, and I fully expected to graduate from college. And I felt really proud of that accomplishment, but it still didn't hit me like my experience graduating from Harvard Law School. It made me recognize that at that moment, I had achieved a level of privilege that the vast majority of people in my position will never have the opportunity to obtain. And so when I did graduate from Harvard Law School, I was particularly emotional about that experience in a way that I hadn't been about graduating from Emory or graduating from high school. And when I reflected on that experience, and when my parents reflected on that experience, what really saddened me the most was that my parents didn't feel that they had contributed in any meaningful way to my success, because, they hadn't gone to college and we grew up poor. So they thought that all of my achievement was me alone. And that moment, I realized that up until that point, I really hadn't shown enough humility and enough gratitude for everything that they did and could do to put me in that position. And that was a great moment of great reflection about the person I wanted to be as a professional, the person I wanted to be as a son, and the person I wanted to be as an engaged member of society.
So I'm not going to send them a copy of this podcast, but if they were here right now, what do you wish you would have said to them when you were in high school or college or Harvard Law School that you didn't get a chance to say to them?
Yeah, I did a lot of complaining growing up. It's like I told you, I really didn't like being poor. I didn't like the fact that a meal every night wasn't guaranteed. I didn't like the fact that our lights would be cut off for weeks at a time. I've since been able to express to my parents how thankful I am for all of the contributions that they've made in my life, all of the character that they built within me, all of the sacrifices that they've made for me. And I don't think I can ever repay them in this lifetime, but I sure will try my best to.
The name of the show is the MBA Candidate Podcast, but I'm really fascinated in how you became a law school candidate. If you had to give some advice to any of our listeners who are interested in law school at any point, how did you get in?
Unlike the business school application, the law school application process is a lot more streamlined. You'll write a personal statement. The component that I focused on a lot outside of the LSAT, which is the entrance exam for law school, you have to put a lot of effort into that. I would say, though, it's easier than the GMAT. And if anyone is interested in Harvard Law School particularly, they now take the GRE. So if you were thinking about a JD MBA, you could take the GRE and you can get into Harvard Business School and Harvard Law School based off your GRE score. Outside of that, I spent a lot of time on my personal statement. And that's something that you can use to really, really stand out. Because unlike the business school process, most law schools don't require an admissions interview, and most don't let you do an admissions interview. Harvard has Skype interviews, but that's more of a formality. So if you get offered a Skype interview, there's like a 70% chance that you'll be admitted. Keep in mind what your goals are post JD. So, for example, if you go to Harvard Law School, they don't give out merit-based aid. All of your financial aid for your 3 years there will be based off of need. And they cap need-based aid at $42,000 a year. And I believe the cost of attendance per year is north of $80,000. So you could still be taking out six figures in loans over your 3 years. However, if you go into public service at Harvard Law School, they have a great loan repayment program where if you make under $80,000 a year, Harvard would pay your student loans. And if you decided that you wanted to go to a big law firm, you're almost guaranteed to be placed at a major law firm making $180,000 starting. And that's typically true for any law school ranked in the top 14.
You graduated from law school just a few years ago, and now you're heading back to business school. Why did you decide that you needed to go back to grad school?
I originally went to law school because I really wanted to make a meaningful impact in the lives of others. However, what I found was my impact was limited. It was more on a case-by-case basis, and it wasn't as broad as I had hoped. I wanted to make a even bigger impact, a more meaningful impact on a greater number of people. And as I thought about my law career 5 to 10 years from now, I just didn't see it happening on a big enough scale. Business school first popped into my head from all of the work that I was doing for corporate clients when I was a white-collar attorney. I was amazed by the way in which business has such a huge and profound impact. I acquired an interest in brand management and marketing because a lot of my corporate clients, they got in trouble because of their marketing activities abroad. So, for example, we represented a pharmaceutical company once who was accused of corruption in Eastern Asia because they were marketing their pharmaceuticals in a way that ran afoul of U.S. law. And I saw just how important the marketing function was within the business, particularly when we're talking about consumer products or pharmaceuticals. I also saw the way that marketing and messaging can really influence people in a very profound way that I had never envisioned before. Prior to applying to business school, I did try to apply for jobs. I did coffee chats, and people would say, you have an amazing resume, just not for this role. And so business school is a great opportunity for me to get that core skill set, that core business knowledge, and combine it with my JD. And I think I'll be a pretty unstoppable candidate for the positions that I apply to.
Complete this sentence for me, Ron. If I weren't going to business school, I would be...
Probably running for political office. That was another route that I had given a lot of consideration because I think a lot of times talented people opt out of public service to the detriment of constituents. And I feel like I had a message and a platform and the passion to do it. So it was just about whether or not that was the best avenue for me to impact the lives of people. I thought at this moment in time, business school made more sense, and building that business acumen could actually help me as it related to any future political ambition.
Well, I think we definitely need more people like you in public service. Who's a person, living or dead, that you'd love to go get a drink with?
Oh, probably Barack Obama. You know, that's a funny question, Adam. Because when I was in law school, I had a professor, his name is Charles Ogletree. He taught Obama, and I took Ogletree's class. The name of the class was Understanding Obama, and I had to write a paper on Obama. I went to go meet with my professor, and he said, I can get Obama on the phone if you want to ask him any questions. And, I never followed through on that because I thought, wow, at first I was amazed that he could just get the president on the phone. And then I was like nervous. I'm like, what would I ask the president? But reflecting on your question now, one thing that I would ask Obama is, what does he want his legacy to be? Or what will be his legacy now that he's out of office? What will he do? Will he be an activist, former president like Jimmy Carter? Or will he take a more low-profile role like a President George W. Bush? And so far, he seems to be pretty low-profile, and I hope that changes.
What kind of president do you think you'd be?
I will be an activist, Maybe I should reserve that comment, and just in case years from now people go to this podcast. No, I'm just joking, but I will be a president. I would be a president focused on the people. And I think by the time that I'm eligible to become president or even think about something like that, I think this would be a vastly different country, a more diverse country, a more tolerant country, and hopefully a country that takes care of, the least amongst us, a country where healthcare is a right. And so hopefully those are not the issues that I have to worry about. But if they are, I will certainly be a president focused on equalizing rights for everybody.
Last two questions for you, Ron. What's something you couldn't live without and something you could live without?
I don't think I could live without music. I think I really like music. And I also think music connects people. And I can't imagine the world where there is no music. It's something that I could live without. I could live without social media. I think the initial purpose of social media is kind of being missed. It's no longer there now. It's morphed into something that's very superficial in many ways. And not to say that it is not still impactful and can be impactful, but I think it's something I could definitely live without, for sure.
Everything except podcasts, right?
Everything except podcasts. See, podcasts, podcasts can add value, give knowledge to people like yours. Whereas I feel like Instagram and Snapchat, I don't really care what you had for lunch.
Well, Ron, this has been amazing, and I'm so glad you were able to come on today's show. Talk about self-awareness as a child. Ron decided to stay in his room and study instead of going outside to play because he knew that his future depended on it. I'll leave you all with what Ronald and I talked about after I stopped recording. It's a story about dignity. When Ron was graduating from high school, his father asked his employer if he could take the day off to attend the ceremony. His boss said no, because they didn't offer paid time off. Well, his dad went anyway, and his boss fired him as a result. Ron told me that this made him feel proud, that his dad loved him enough to sacrifice his job. Experiences are worth more than paychecks, he said. On the next episode of the MBA Candidate Podcast, I'm going to share my business school application story. I'll walk you through where I went wrong and give you some insight into what I think really helped push me over the edge. I'll also talk a little bit about what I've got planned for the show for the rest of the year. If you've enjoyed listening to the first few episodes, please go on iTunes and click over to the ratings and reviews section. If you say something nice about the show, it will help me a lot. I'm Adam Miller, and this is the MBA Candidate Podcast.